guys, welcome to episode 6, and today I wanted to talk to you about video game collecting, what it means to be a collector, what types of libraries you can build, and why you would want to be a collector. Why do I do this? Why do I do everything that's over there? Why am I doing this? For starters, the types of collections that people build. There are many types of collectors. One would be considered a library collector, and that tends to be someone who will kind of get anything and everything within reason. Sometimes they'll exclude things like the yearly sports game releases, or Barbie's horse riding, or Mary-Kate and Ashley's Mystery Mall, which is an actual game that I have owned. That's a different story though. But a library collector is someone who is looking to build a collection of thousands of games, collections, and sometimes the tens of thousands, and it's more of having fun with collecting itself rather than playing games. Not to say that a lot of library collectors don't play games, a lot of them do and love them, but you can't play tens of thousands of games, it's impossible. It's more the fun of collecting and finding that good deal and building a library, building sort of a history, a chronicle, a time capsule of gaming within their lifetime. And sometimes it's built to pass on to kids or pass on to different family members, or many times it's just the hobby of collecting, like I said, in itself, without gameplay being the primary reason. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's not what I do, but I can definitely understand the appeal of that. It's a lot of fun to collect games. That's one of the reasons I do it, is not that it's just fun to play games and love games, but the actual act of collecting and being part of collecting communities is fun in itself. And for library collectors, they'll go all over the place, buy tons of games, like I said, buy almost everything. Another type would be a more specific library collector. Say someone really fell in love with the Sega Genesis. Maybe it's something they grew up playing with their dad every day, and their dad died young, and they just have this memory. They tie these feelings and emotions of spending time with their father with the Sega Genesis, so they want to buy and find every single Sega Genesis game ever made and have just a massive Genesis collection. That's one thing that some people do. And another thing would be, say, you're just following Nintendo. You love Nintendo for some reason. You grew up with Nintendo, and you don't really own a lot of other systems, but you have every Nintendo system ever. You look for all those great, rare games on Nintendo systems, like Jack Brothers and the Virtual Boy or something, and you really follow a certain company, or you follow Sega, or you follow Microsoft, or NEC, or Bandai, or you follow Sony. And that's another version of a library collector. It's the same idea, where you have tons of games for very specific systems, even complete collections for certain systems, but you're more focused on a company, a manufacturer. Another even more specific version of that, is sort of like different levels, would be someone does it for a certain developer or publisher. Rather than a specific game company, you do it for, say, like Atlas or Squaresoft. Squaresoft's a big one where a lot of people try to collect every game, get all the Squaresoft Millennium collections for PS1, just follow that company, or follow like Capcom or something, and you just get a lot of those games rather than for a specific set of systems. And the point about the Sega Genesis I was talking about brings up another thing. A lot of what you collect, don't listen to other people, don't decide to get a system just because a lot of other people love it, and don't feel bad if you don't like something a lot of other people do, or if no one knows about something that's your favorite thing, or it's all about you, it's all about passion. And a lot of why we like certain systems is nostalgia, and is how we tie emotions to certain games, to certain systems. You might love something that you, even in the back of your mind, objectively know is not that great, but you adore it for some reason. I'll talk about how much I love Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda someday, which is technically a horrendous TV series, but I love it. But that's what you do. That's why you collect what you collect, because you collect what you love for your own personal reasons, not because other people say you should or think you should. Maybe you can't stand the Super Nintendo and a lot of people love it, but a lot of people love it because of childhood memories, not necessarily like if you never played any Super Nintendo ever and you go back, you might only find a handful of games that you really love. There are some all-time classics that you can't not love, like it's just insane, but even in saying that, maybe you don't, and that's nothing wrong with that. If you hate Chrono Trigger, it's just not your style of game. But so that's sort of library collectors, and then you get into people who collect for certain genres, especially with RPGs. That's a big thing where typically if you're into other genres, if you're into first-person shooters, into action adventure, whatever, even visual novels, you tend to branch out more. But there are a lot of people who very specifically collect RPGs and a very few games in other genres. And that's partially because you get so much playtime out of RPGs, and you're tied a lot closer to them sometimes emotionally because of the more fleshed out characters. Rather than playing a character in a short game, you're playing a character in a game that's 30 to a couple hundred hours long, and growing with that character and exploring a world, and maybe it's even progressed into a series. So there tends to be more of a connection, stronger fan bases definitely for a lot of RPG series. And they also retain their value a lot more, and also gain value. A lot of RPGs, even ones that I've had, they have gone up in value. Some of them doubled, tripled, quadrupled in value, while other games have stayed the same or gone down, lost value over time. And as a genre, they tend to hold on to value a lot more and even go up. I'm still kicking myself for way back in the day when I got my PS2. I traded in the North American version of Tales of Destiny, and it's my favorite Tales game of all time. Getting a Japanese version is cheap, it's like $20, but I'd love to have the old PS1 North American version again. And I remember when I traded it in, I maybe got like $10 because it wasn't worth much at the time. And now a used copy, you're lucky to find it under 100. The lowest I've ever seen it is like 70 or 80 bucks. So it's like, ugh, someday I'll get you back. But that's just the thing. Like, you think about when you're trading games in. One reason to build a collection is to, if you think you're going to play a game again, I'm not talking about next week or next month, but if you really feel like you're going to love that system that you have, you're always going to have that system, and you might want to play that game down the road, hold on to it. You might regret it. I mean, everyone who has gotten into gaming, especially collecting, has stories of, for some reason or another, there's something they really wanted in the moment, and they traded in something and regretted it, maybe not till like 5-10 years later, but think about it. And that's not to say hold on to everything if you think you really won't ever play it again. If there's something that you really want, more, you thought about it, you haven't gone, if you go to the store, don't buy it then and there if you have to sacrifice another game to get it. Think about it. That's one thing. The most important thing, though, besides passion and collecting just what you love because you love it, is knowledge. That's how you're going to build a collection, is knowledge. Like anything else, knowledge is power. The more you know. And how to get around that, it takes years. It's not something that, like, building a collection is something that you shouldn't do quickly. I mean, any Joe Schmo who won the lottery can go to Amazon and eBay and in 48 hours build a collection of millions of games. But the fun is more in finding them individually and taking your time and getting amazing deals. And just, sometimes you appreciate getting a game more if it took you a long time to get it, if you really had to work for it. If you work for things, you love them more. That's true in everything. If you had to work for something to make, to obtain it, you appreciate it more, whether that's even like, a college degree or like anything in life. The harder you work for something, the more you're going to appreciate having it. And that really goes with gaming. It really, really does. You want to spend the time looking for the stuff that you love, going to places like yard sales, going to places like Goodwill, and you will normally not find anything or find something you're like, it's not that great of a deal. But the whole point is patience and waiting to find those amazing deals. It may take you years, but you very slowly build a collection up around you. And to do that, you have to know what you're looking for. You have to realize things like the original release of Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast had a bad printing issue, so it's subject to bit rot. But the Sega All-Stars version, which is just another printing, does not have that problem. And knowing that will save you a lot of money. Knowing, going to a yard sale and finding a game that you're like, I'm not really interested in this, and putting it down and finding out later that it's worth like $400 and they're selling it in a bin for 50 cents, and just kicking yourself. Sometimes you end up buying games at places like that you don't personally want, but a big thing is trade fodder. Buying second, third, fourth copies of games that you already own, if you know that that game is worth a lot more than what you're going to pay for it, you can then take those and trade them into, either a store, trade with a person, or sell them online for a game that you do want. Trade fodder is a really good way to get a lot of games. I don't do it a lot, but is definitely a way, especially if you have room, to just have like a little shelf or something with things you're going to trade to get. It's a good way to get it. Using eBay is a great thing to do. Be careful though. Knowledge comes into play again. You have to know how to detect fakes, especially with a lot of cartridge games. How to detect a fake game from the real thing. How to look for quality. How to look for if there's issues with the game. And knowing prices off the top of your head is a really good thing. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can get apps. You can get but eventually you want to get to a point, knowledge-wise, which takes years, where you can sort of rattle off, this game I know is worth between 10 to 20, and you see for 25, it's not a good deal. Just being able to know that, and knowing libraries of games, spending time. One thing I do is go to Amazon and literally just type in like PlayStation 2 and click on the games link, and it'll come up with every game that's under the category of PlayStation 2 on Amazon. And just while you're watching movies or something some afternoon, literally go through the entire thing and just look at them. And it's something that you don't have to sit down and just do it one shot. You shouldn't do that. Don't have to spend hours. I mean, it's honestly something where an hour or two a week, and over the course of years, it's amazing what you'll learn. I mean, that's goes for anything, even just expanding your vocabulary, even trying to learn another language, just like a little bit at a time. You're not going to get a lot quickly, but it's patience over the course of years. I mean, at now I absolutely know off the top of my head, if I wanted to, I could sit here and just rattle off easily over 1,000 PS2 titles from memory. That's just from memory, and I know I would recognize 4 times that much, like the whole library just by sight. So much, and it's not even just PS2. So many other systems: Dreamcast, GameCube, PC Engine, Super Nintendo. I could just rattle off games and prices and publishers and all this information, and that doesn't come from obsessively like I'm just gonna spend all of my time on the YouTubes. I'm gonna spend all my time researching. It comes from just being in love with the passion of learning, and it's one of those things where I combine. I love history. I love video games. I love just learning in general. And it's all those things put together. I love learning about the industry of games and the history of games, and just a casual, occasional thing instead of maybe watching an hour or two of TV on a Friday night. Spend an hour or two doing some research. Sorry, I need a drink here. A little bit of product placement. But that's what you have to do. Knowledge is the most important thing. Knowing what libraries, what it consists of, prices, condition, just knowing it will save you time and money. And it's the biggest component of what I consider to be the most important thing you can do if you get into collecting at all, is to create a list of games that you want, basically like a giant checklist, and really limit it. For me, I'm more about, I don't follow specific consoles or systems or developers or whatever. I think about the games that I love and then get the systems that go with those games. I do love hardware. I do, love knowing all the technical specifications. I do love hardware designs, looking at different things like that and controllers, but I'm very much more about the games and thinking about the games first and the systems second. I mean, there's so many times where I have, might have like 5 or 6 games for a system that I don't even own the system yet, but I know I want those games, and I found them really cheap, and eventually I'll be able to get the system. It's, that's what I follow. I follow the games first. But, like I said, the main thing to get into is learning to create a list that saves you from just, even as you're learning, just buying things because you recognize them, buying things because you like them. Know what your limits are, too. Be able to figure out, how much do I actually devote to gaming? How much time do I devote to gaming? It's not about money. That's honestly, in a lot of ways, unless you're going absolutely crazy looking for like insane rare things, money isn't really a huge obstacle. It doesn't even matter really who you are, because the whole idea is patience. Like I said, any jackass can go with $1 million and buy whatever you want, and there's no fun in that. There's no just like achievement in that. What is great is just waiting. Like if you want that game and it's, it takes you a year to save up for it, take a year to save up for it. It's time. Eventually, over the years, you will get those things that you really would love to be able to play. Like, it just will build up eventually. Just be patient and know what you're doing, and don't waste your time, don't waste your money, do all the research. And like everything else, knowledge is power. So what I've done is, it took me years, and I'm pretty much almost entirely finished with it right now, to generate a list of not only like every single game that I want for every single system, and I even have very limited sort of open slots listed in italics for limiting, like I'm only allowed to add like 4 or 5 more games to the system if I happen to find them, like random finds. And try not to ever add to that list. If you do add, take something off. That's one thing. If you see a game that you really want after you've done creating this list, which it took me years to make, a little bit at a time, you look through your list as you're looking at this game, or even mentally go through your list if you're in a store and it's sort of a, you have to get this or you'll never get that deal again type thing. And think about, is there any game on that list that I don't want as much as the game in my hand? And if the answer is no, don't get that game. You have to come to terms with the fact that it's, of course, obviously impossible to play every game ever made. It's ridiculous. And it's equally ridiculous to want to play every good game ever made. Even if you know every single, language, so there's no language barrier, and you can have the time, you will never in a lifetime be able to play every good game. And even a step further, you will never play every good game that you want to play. And that may seem a little ridiculous if you don't know a lot about gaming, but if you do all that research and you do have all that knowledge, you will have thousands of titles stored in your mind that a huge percentage of them, you're like, I'd really like to play that someday. And realizing that you can't. Realizing that you have to break down that list. And what that does is not only saves you from getting tons of games that you'll never have time to play and just having like a library sitting there collecting dust, it will help you not missing out on the games you want the most. Because if you go through and just start getting every game that you really would like to play, and eventually get to the point where like, all right, my library is so big I cannot buy anymore, if you haven't taken the time, you might miss out on some other ones that you wanted to play more than the ones you have played. So again, it's just knowledge, time, and passion. Those are the ingredients to building a really good collection, having fun with it, and not having it like take over your life. Realizing that other limitations for me personally, thinking about how much, what is my upper limit towards the number of games that I want, not including like doubles and special editions and whatever. I had to think about, well, gaming is not my only hobby. Even though I devote a lot of time to it and really love it, I love to read, I love to write, I play board games, I like going to the gym, hang out with friends doing non-gaming things. I love playing pen and paper role-playing games. And just occasionally there's some TV shows that I like. There are movies I want to watch. I like learning languages. I love my wife and I have huge sections of in our giant library because she collects books. Like non-fiction sections that I love to read. I love learning about history and about other cultures, and I love learning about anthropology and like all these things. So you can't think of gaming as like your only hobby when you're creating the list. You have to take into account the other things that you do, and obviously all the time devoted to work. I mean, that's going to cut down on your gaming time exponentially. And also thinking about, for me, for gaming, eventually my wife and I, when we're settled in our permanent home, we're going to have absolutely a library, a book library, and a gaming room. And it's going to be permanent things with like permanent shelves built onto the walls. I'm going to have these like great like clear plastic cases, and it's all very planned out. And thinking about, these are things that I'm going to want my entire life. Thinking about condition, thinking about taking care of things, and being able to pass them on to my children. What are things that I want to experience again for the rest of my life? What are things I want to experience with my kids? What are things I want to be able to pass down? What are things that are important to me? What does my collection say about me as a person? That's a question you have to really think about. And just be passionate, spend the time, create a list, even hardware, even have a list of the hardware that I want with specific model numbers on a lot of things. And like, how many of this version of a PlayStation 2 do I want in my collection? Because I want to learn how to repair and keep systems going forever, but you're also going to want lots of like backups and like parts and whatever. And as far as backups, I mentioned doubles and collector's editions. I use games to help me learn Japanese and have import titles, not just of titles that you can only get as imports, but I like to be able to have maybe a Japanese version of a game I have in English. Sometimes there's differences, but even if they're the exact same game except the language, if it's a favorite game, that can help you learn the language by playing through something you know by heart in a different language after you get your skill level to a certain point. And also buying doubles of, if there's a game that you really, really love and you know you're going to be playing this thing until you're 90 years old, something like Xenoblade Chronicles for me, or some of the older Final Fantasies, or just whatever, tons of games, you want to, in a lot of cases, it's actually a good idea to have doubles. You don't want to get obsessive and cut down on the number of individual games that you get to experience because you're buying doubles of everything, and that sort of fills up that limit you have on your library. You don't want to do that, but games can wear down over time. It's 50 to 100 years is sort of the bottom for a disc, especially a CD or a DVD, that it'll last if you take care of it. That's sort of, you get the base and it goes up from there. It could outlast you by a couple hundred years if taken really good care of. But if you have a favorite game and you're able to get a double cheaply, there's no reason not to get it. And if you change your mind any time, that can always be resell. But there are certain games I want doubles of, certain games that you might have a regular edition and a special edition, because you have the regular edition to play and the special edition you kind of keep in like almost pristine condition, just like it's an awesome thing to have. And you have to give that a lot of thought too when you're making that list. That's why you create that limit for yourself after you really do the math, and it is a lot of math figuring out how much time you can devote to gaming, you think, and how just doing it all and by how long you think you're going to live, and just going through this big equation. I'll talk more about that if you guys want at some point. But in creating that list, thinking about if you go crazy with trying to buy a special edition for every game that you really love, that's taking up slots in that list. And do you really want it? Do you really want, how much do you want to spend on that special edition? Look for it, and you have to really think about that. It's time, it's passion, and it's knowledge. Knowledge is, again, the thing that will fuel that passion and really make you understand why you're collecting for yourself. What type of collector are you, and why are you collecting? And it'll give you the tools to do it. Because I see a lot of people go out and spend just ridiculous amounts of money and have like nothing. And even people that really want to be collectors going out and spending $40, $50, $60 on games at launch. And occasionally you want to do that. I mean, there are games that I've paid over $100 for, but there are plenty of games you have to think about, what is it worth to you? Is this game worth $60 to me? Like, will it always be? Or can I just wait and get it $20, or $5, or even $1 sometimes? You can find games if you're lucky. You have to just really be smart about it. It doesn't take, like I said, this is just one shelf behind me. This is nowhere near all my games. It's basically all my PS2 and some Xbox and stuff on the bottom. And that collection is worth at least, I've gone through it, and at least 3 to 4 times what I've paid for it. More than that, more realistically, but on, keeping on the conservative edge, 3 to 4 times what I've paid for it. And some of that, it's, because of over time, things are worth more, but sometimes it's just the ridiculous deals I found. And it doesn't take as much financially as you think to build a good game collection, and it's not about that. It's about doing what you love. So go out there, create your own collection. Even if it's just like, I just want maybe like 100 games and like 2 or 3 systems, go and do that. Go and collect games that you remember from your childhood, or just stick to newer stuff, or have a spread, or if you have a favorite generation of consoles. I love Gen 5 and Gen 6, especially Gen 6. Just do what you love and make yourself happy, and don't give a crap about what anyone else says or what anyone else thinks, but use people as sources of knowledge. Find people that know what they're talking about, and learn how to identify people that know what they're talking about, and not just people talking out of their ass. And figure out how to build that collection. Make a plan. Spend years. Don't go out and try and get like a huge percentage of that collection in one day. Just buy a few things at a time, and it just takes time. And like I said, build that list, do your research. Just like an hour or 2 a week at most is all you need. And over a couple of years, you will have so much knowledge. You'll be able to be certain and say, all right, on this list, not only do I have every Dreamcast game that I want, I know for a fact that these are the Dreamcast games that I want. I know I'm not missing things because I've done all my research before I've gone out and bought things. and I know this is my list, and you check it off, and you'll be surprised at how quickly you can just cross things off on that list. It is really, really a lot of fun collecting in itself. You get to meet so many amazing people. You really get involved in a lot of communities, and collecting in itself is just a lot of fun. Going on these adventures, even if you don't find anything, just going out. And I love just going out and spending time with my wife, going to like Goodwill all the time. We go sometimes once a week, depending on our schedules, and it's just a lot of fun. It can be a very social thing, and then when you're done, you have amazing games to play. So have fun with it, and I will see you next episode. One last note: if there's anything you wanted me to clarify, anything that you want to know, like a question that I didn't answer, that I'm just kind of doing this off the cuff today. There's maybe something I missed. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, and I will eventually do an update video answering those questions. And if I think of anything in the meantime to add or clarify, from me watching this, that I'll go ahead and add. Probably in like maybe a month I'll do that. So let me know below anything else you want to know about this subject, or even if you want to know things about my collection. I'll see you later.